Hello, and welcome to The Alt Left.
Hello, and welcome back to The Alt Left, episode 12. Today is February 10th, 2025. With me, as always, is Matthew Broderick.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back.
And Reverend Dr. K.
Hello, everyone.
Today, we're going to be talking about the goddamn nonsense going on in Congress, the Senate, and the Republican Party, and everything happening with the falsehoods of the GQP.
Yeah, remember how last week we were all talking about how there was a fracturing of the party? Nope, they fixed that shit quick, fast, in a hurry. And they all went right off the edge.
Yes, they pulled out a big bottle of Elmer's glue ignorance, and they have now stuck together and decided that kosher space lasers are the fucking way to go.
Yep.
Everybody got right in line. Goose stepping
shit.
the whole way there.
It's just amazing, too. Yeah, I mean, we're literally a week ago talking about how there's this big divide and we don't know what's going to happen. And then I think it was like the day after we actually recorded that episode, everyone on the right was just like, no, yeah, we're all with Trump now. We're pretty much it. There's like,
fucking Zeke Heil. Let's do it.
Yeah. There's like 6 of us that actually still give a damn about the Constitution, but the rest of us, nope, we're out of here.
Yeah, somebody call Hugo Boss. We're going to redesign the logo. We're going to change the elephant out for an eagle. This will be fine. So to everyone who doesn't know, Marjorie Taylor Green is a Republican senator and is just completely batshit crazy, and she's the worst of Republican voters. She believes, again, this is the woman who claimed that Jewish space lasers with a Nazi conspiracy theory are burning down forests in California. The one who is, besides 9/11 conspiracies, I mean, big one was school shooting denials. She's just been the absolute worst of the QAnon crap, and she's been elected to office.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, this woman is crazy personified, but in the same way, she is absolutely 100% the poster child for the modern right wing.
So how did she rise so quickly?
So it was actually pure Republican strategy. Rich woman moves to the poorest neighborhood in her district, where a seat just opened up. Campaign with that good old fear mongering and hatred, and the communists are coming for you for your gold that you haven't gotten yet because you're all just temporarily embarrassed millionaires, and the fear mongering, and she won. She didn't even live in that district, by the way.
Yeah, didn't she move there to an election that she knew she could win?
100%.
I'm sure she probably bought a house. I can't believe that she actually lived there.
Nope, bought a house in the district, moved there. Like, again, I'm putting this in quotations, moved, because this is what a lot of rich people will typically do, is they'll buy property of some kind in the district they actually want to run in, where they know they can win.
Yeah, I do love it. Only in politics do people buy a home so they can work there.
Yeah. But no, she got in, she won, she ran on all this backwards crazy. And again, they're living in the South. I mean, again, I don't want to disparage everyone in the South. It's literally poor, uneducated white people that just ate this stuff up hook, line, and sinker. And so she won. It was basically just this whole platform of, socialism bad, which, let me tell you, if there's one person in this world that's going to know about socialism, it's a rich white girl from the South. I mean, am I right, folks?
Who else is going to save us from Red China communist Joe Biden?
Yeah.
Who else knows about disparage?
He's here to give abortions.
And so she wins the seat, and then she just, in pure psycho right-winger fashion, rockets off on crazy, all right? I'm going to give you all a quick rundown of just some of the highlights of what she's been saying.
If we're going to do that, I have to introduce my 2 favorite things Marjorie Taylor Green has ever said. And this is not Jewish space lasers, because that's low-hanging fruit. She has an old one where in February of 2019, she was in an online video filmed at the Capitol, at the actual U.S. Capitol building in D.C., arguing that Democratic representatives Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, which, by the way, Ilhan Omar's Minnesota, Rashida Tlaib is Michigan. These aren't California or New York representatives. These are people in the heartland. But she was arguing that Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib weren't really official members of Congress because they didn't take the oath of office on the Bible.
Yep. She's not the only one to do that, by the way. There was a couple others peddling that bullshit idea.
Yeah, but she was the one who came out and did that at such... Yeah, there were some commentators on Fox News who had said that, because they're Muslim. And it was just... And you can take the oath of office on a copy Moby Dick if you want. And her quote was, I really want to go talk to these ladies and ask them what they're thinking and why they're serving in our American government. They really should go back to the Middle East. Now, Rashida Tlaib was born in the U.S. She was born in fucking Detroit. I mean, she's got a Springsteen background. And Ilhan Omar was born in Somalia and came to the U.S. when she was a child and was a U.S. citizen before she was an adult.
And by the way, both of them know more about the U.S., our Constitution, civics, and government leadership than this crazy broad will ever even... Like, they've forgotten more than she will ever know.
Oh, I believe that entirely.
Oh, yeah. And then my other one is after the DC takeover attempt. It was on January 9th. She tweeted, if the January 6th organizers were Trump supporters, then why did they attack us while we were objecting to electoral college votes for Joe Biden? The attack ruined our objection that we spent weeks preparing for, which devastated our efforts on behalf of Trump and his voters. And if that isn't the dog ate my homework, I don't know what is. Like, so she's claiming that tired old, it was actually left-wing people pretending to be Trumpsters because they wanted to ruin this perfect objection we were about to bring forth, even though we lost every court case. We had this perfect objection that nobody knew about, and it was going to be great, but they ruined it, and now no one can see it. It doesn't exist anymore. Don't worry about it. But it was perfect, and it would have proved everything. That's why we don't have any proof.
I'm going to try and get through this as quickly and as clearly as I possibly can. So here's some highlights from the batshit bag of crazy that is Marjorie Taylor Green. Number 1, she linked Hillary Clinton to pedophilia and human sacrifice. Number 2, she said Barack Obama worked with MS-13 to kill Seth Rich. Number 3, she described the 2018 midterm elections as an Islamic invasion of our government. She called Democrats a global cabal of Satan-worshipping pedophiles.
Hail Satan.
She harassed teenage survivors of school shootings and repeatedly claimed those shootings were fiction. She claimed 9/11 was a hoax. She said that black people should be proud of the Confederate monuments. She said Muslims don't belong in government. She shared videos from Holocaust deniers, posed for pictures with KKK leadership. She thinks California wildfires were caused by Jewish space lasers. Like, can't make this shit up, people. And repeatedly called for the execution of elected officials. These are just the highlights. There is years of this shit. Stuff that she has gone back on Facebook and now deleted because it came back to haunt her. This woman is certifiably insane. She represents a district in the United States, but more than that, she is representative of the batshit bag of steaming hot crazy that the right wing has become.
I actually wonder if, much like in field theory of physics, that where a field exists, a particle shall be born. Like, you almost wonder if simply the effervescence of Fox News and OAN just like the Force with Anakin Skywalker just manifested her out of the ether, and she's just the evil incarnate creation that is right-wing media. Like, she's just, like where they get those like AI bots to talk online for a while until they can try to sound like a real person. Like, that's her. Like, she just watched enough Fox News, and now it's just regurgitated talking points strewn together with a grammar checker.
And again, keep in mind, this is the kind of person that the right is now leaning into. This is where they've decided to go. And this is what we mean. We were talking about the fracturing of the parties because for a split second there, we thought there was going to be enough Republicans that were like, you know what? This is too much. We're out. Nope. The majority of them have all said, well, this is where our party's going now, so we're going to go along with it. And they pretty much all backed her. The votes recently, they had a vote to basically remove her from all her committee appointments. So she's still a serving congresswoman, but every committee that she was assigned to, which by the way, this batshit crazy person was put on an education committee. Like, who the fuck would ever put this woman in charge of education at any level?
This is the party that brings snowballs into Congress to prove that global warming isn't real, dude.
Yeah, I know, right? It's just like, it blows me away. But we recently had, the Dems were like, no, we got to get this crazy lady out of here. The Dems basically made it so that she was removed from all of her committees, and it's the kind of thing that all the congressional leaders vote on. And of course, it was split down pretty much party lines. I think it was like the same 11 Republicans that voted to impeach Trump also voted to remove her. Anyway, the bottom line is it passed pretty much on party lines, and they got her out of there. So she's no longer on any committees. But she still has overwhelming support. Like almost every congressional Republican supports her. The electorate support her. She's generating money like crazy right now because of all this crazy. They've just doubled down into it. And then she, of course, had this like pseudo faux apology where she didn't really apologize.
Well, and even when she denounced what she said, she gave this speech in front of Congress where she basically just stood there and said, "Okay, fine. 9/11 happened." And it was like, first of all, that wasn't in question. Secondly, even conspiracy theorists think 9/11 happened. You at no point disavowed your, I think there's a secret Muslim child-eating cabal in the government who created 9/11. Like, none of that. She didn't backpedal on anything. It was just like Trump's Proud Boys stand back, stand by bullshit. She went up there and said 9/11 happened and we were all supposed to buy it.
It was a non-apology apology.
Yeah.
It was her going up there saying a bunch of crap, but does it really do anything? Does it really mean anything? No. And the Republican Congress and Senate, they continue to support her and buy into her popularity because it makes them money. That's the only reason why they're doing it.
Well, I mean, it's money and getting elected. Those are the big two.
Yeah, it makes them money. That's the only reason why they care.
I actually think my personal belief is I don't think it has anything to do with money, for once. I think this has to do with voting. The GQP has a big problem, and that's that no one fucking votes for them anymore. They really chose the hill to die on as 80-year-old racists, and unfortunately that population is ever dwindling and has been for the last 40 years. And with that voter base disappearing at a rapid rate, the GOP has a problem. This is why this is the party who started gerrymandering. Now, I know the Democrats have their hand in gerrymandering as well, but it was a return fire situation. The Democratic
and they don't
Party
do it nearly as bad. Like it's skewed, but like
I don't mind that they do it at this point because it's literally them just trying to create a more fair election at this point.
Yeah.
Gerrymandering should be completely illegal. There should absolutely be a bipartisan half and half council that approves every district. End of fucking story.
Yep.
And then it should have to be ratified by the Supreme Court or something. Like it's ridiculous. It needs to be non-partial, and it's an absolute affront to elections.
Yep.
But the GQP has a problem with elections and getting votes, and this is why they participate in purging voter lists and disenfranchising people of color and young people. They don't want them voting. This is the only way they can win elections, and I think it's a misguided attempt. I think they see this QAnon bullshit as the future, and this is their way of adapting. That if they don't go with this flow, which is ridiculous, because they do need to adapt, and they could do really well if they went the Mitt Romney, John McCain way. Mm-hmm. If they went to a more centered approach, they would actually become a far more popular party because they would steal the center away from the Democrats.
Yep.
But they don't, and they're just doubling down on this Q bullshit, and I really think it's for votes. I think they feel this is the only way they're going to get votes, and it's working in the short term. These QAnon reps are getting elected, but it's not going to last. And I think they're really, they're really being penny wise, pound stupid on this one.
Yeah, and it's kind of like what I said before too. I said it on previous episode. The GOP goes where the party goes. The party gets crazier, and the GOP doubles down on that crazy because, and again, all the bad things we say about the GOP are true. But the one thing you can say is they will always capitulate to their base. That is the one difference between them and the left. The Dems do not. The Dems shoot for people that really are ambivalent about voting for them, which has always blown me away.
I think that's who the GOP used to be until recently. They're not anymore because the base of the GOP doesn't like this. Republicans don't even like Trump. You know, ever since Bush, see, it was Bush Sr. was up for re-election. There's actually this, and it's an anecdote told by George W. and his election manager, how, you know, they felt that George Herbert Walker Bush needed to embrace the far-right evangelical movement to get the votes. He refused because he's not an evangelical, and he's a pragmatist. He's a lot of things. He's a monster, but he doesn't believe in that kind of crap. He doesn't like cheap plays like that, and he lost the election to Clinton. George W. runs, and he dives right in, goes straight for the evangelical route, goes straight for the hardcore Christian route, and he wins twice. And this is what we see them doing, and the QAnon is the latest iteration of this. The Republican Party is so desperate for votes, even their base doesn't like them. They're needing to bring out these fringe groups, because if you can get a fringe group on your side, they'll vote en masse. Even though the fringe group might be a much smaller number than a large viewpoint, a lot of the large viewpoints don't show up to vote. If you come out and you say, I think all militias are great, the Proud Boys are great, all these like those guys are nuts, they're fanatics, and they're all going to show up to the polls.
Yep, and they're going to bring their friends and their families, and even people that aren't part of the militia along with them, they're going to bring them along.
Yeah, these guys are going to campaign for you.
Yep.
And that's what the GOP is doing to get votes, is they're constantly aiming for these fringe groups to get them in, and it's not going to last.
I mean, well, and you're right. I saw an article even today about how the same set of circumstances that created this Georgia flip that we just saw are present and active and working right now in Texas. Most analysts I'm reading now, I actually Googled it up a little bit this afternoon, but Texas, they feel as if it is not in play in 2 years, it will be in 4.
Yeah.
It speaks to what Chris is saying, because it's true. Don't get me wrong. Trump absolutely had the second biggest numbers of any other president in history. That is a fact. But it is the last gasp of a dying group of ideas. It really
God,
is.
I hope so. I really hope so.
Well, this thing, I'm now seeing it, especially in this election. The right keeps doubling down on this crazy, and they keep putting up somebody worse and worse. And don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating for this. I hate that we got Trump. I hate that we're probably going to get someone even worse down the line. But the worse the person is that gets put up, the more visceral reaction that you get from the left, the center, and even in this case, the right. I mean, it's small numbers, but another article I read was saying something like, typical what you would expect to see after an election, regardless of party, is a switching of sides of anywhere from 60 to 75,000 people. That's kind of normal. You see that if it's Democrat, Republican, whatever, whoever wins or loses, that's what you see. This time around, it's almost double that for the GOP. And again, you got to factor in things like people that were always anti-Trump but just decided to pull the trigger after what happened on the 6th. But there definitely seems to be a palpable amount of negative reaction from the right in regards to what happened on the 6th. And again, those numbers pale in comparison when you look at who actually voted for Trump. So I'm not trying to say it's this tidal wave of abandonment, but enough that it's statistically significant. There's enough horrible going on in the GOP now that even its most staunch defenders are starting to look at it and be like, well, maybe I don't want to associate with this anymore. And again, that brings us kind of back to why we're talking today about Marjorie Taylor Green. And she's one factor. Trump is obviously another. But these are just these out there ideas that have gripped the right by its haunches, and it will not let go. I think a lot of these congressional leaders have capitulated to this nonsense and enabled it and encouraged it, whether they did it outright or whether they did it by dog whistling. They have been fostering, like I said last week, this fire, and now this fire has grown out of control. And instead of running over to the sides here and grabbing hoses and buckets of water like the rest of us, they're like, nope, we're going to go on the other side of this hill and just keep lighting matches. And eventually they're going to get burned. And I think that's kind of what is happening right now. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I think this is kind of like an old tiger sensing the end where it's at its most ferocious, to quote a line from League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. But it's true. I would like to believe that this is the last gasp of a set of ideals that are finally on their way out. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I'd like to believe that too, but I just don't. I believe that there's a lot of people that are horrible human beings that don't give a fuck about anybody else and except for their own whiteness, and that want to continue to oppress people and are going to continue to elect people that are shitty, that don't give a fuck about them, because this is what we've done for 50 fucking years. It hasn't changed. It's not changing. I think that people are going to continue to make bad choices, and choices that are against their own beliefs or their own self-interests.
All right. What do you think, Chrissy Poo?
I mean, I've been saying for quite a while that I agree. I've been saying for a while that I think that this is the last gasp of a dying thing, and it's sweeping around the world. This isn't an American phenomenon. We have to remember this right-wing, crazy-ass, nut-job, ultra-racist, nationalist movement is happening in Germany. It's happening in England. It's happening in Russia. It's happening everywhere. There's nowhere that this isn't going on. I mean, again, Brexit happened because of basically QAnon Trumpsters, just the British version. They didn't like brown Muslim immigrants coming in anymore, so they wanted to separate from the EU. That's literally the reason why they did the separation. It was for the stopping of immigration. That was the motive behind it. It's ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and when things started going bad, weren't a lot of the they were doing a lot of polling in Britain, and weren't they finding out that like most of the people that were in favor of this didn't even realize what they were voting for? Like they didn't realize the negative impacts that everything was going to have, and a lot of them were like regretting they had voted for it.
Yeah, but the ones, again, the people who voted for it, it's like they were, I agree it wasn't communicated well, but the motivation was like, well, there's a lot of scary Muslim people coming in here, so my pity is low. And at any point in time, Britain's allowed back. The EU said you can come back whenever you're done being a dipshit. They have an open invitation to rejoin the EU. I think they should wait a few years, because if they do it right away, honestly, France and Germany are just gonna like send them dick pics and call them names for a while, like
which they should.
Well, yeah, exactly. Which they should wait a couple of years, let it die down, and be like, and then come back with their hat in their hands and say, "Please, sir, can we come back home, Mom?" But that's what happened, and that's happening everywhere. In the U.S., it's just magnified, and we shouldn't be surprised. Again, the Confederacy never died. We are still in the midst of our Civil War. We are going to be gasoline on the fire that is nationalism, right? And the World War II era was a reprieve from it. It was a break. It was not a change. It doesn't surprise me that when globally, as progress has come, there's a new movement of right-wing nationalism. It's going to be the loudest here. Like, yeah, this is the country of NASCAR and chili cheese fries. Yeah, no shit, we're going to be obnoxious with our right-wing garbage. I think it's going to die. It's not going to win, because progress always wins. I can think of one time in the history of the planet where progress didn't win in the long run, and that was the Dark Ages, and that's only because of the Black Plague. And now that I'm talking about this while we have a plague going on, maybe I should keep my postulation down a little bit. But, it was only when a quarter of the population of an entire continent died that the right wing won out. And even then, you could say there was still a major progressive movement, because that's what led to the end of serfdom.
Yeah, I was going to say, didn't we get the Renaissance literally right after the Dark Ages?
Yes. Yeah, and again, that's what got rid of serfdom. There wasn't the surplus population anymore, and all of a sudden, nobles and rich people needed laborers, and they went, we're not working for that anymore. Do something about it. And so they actually had to start paying people money, instead of just saying, we won't kill you. So that's progress will always happen. There will be setbacks. There will be times where the ultra right. I mean, again, look at Germany. Germany was, Germany starts out its career as a country as this backwater nut job fighting clans. I mean, just imagine a more violent ancient Scotland, and that's Germany. There's a bunch of clans who fucking hate each other, and the only thing that unites them is hating the Romans even more. That's Germany. And then all of a sudden, a couple kings come along, take over the country, and now we're Deutschland. Hooray! Everything's great. And now we're the Holy Roman frickin' Empire. And Germany has this prosperity. It's a center of wealth, of education. And then, Then they have a huge empire spanning the east side of Africa, which that's not great, but we're talking about progress, not morality. And Germany comes out of the war really bad, and this crazy nut job right-wing movement comes at it because that's what happens with calamity. And that's why they went to that. But they won out. Germany was smashed, and Germany is now one of the most progressive places where people have this crazy high standard of living. They value science. They value rationality. They have fantastic civil rights in Germany, far better than most places in the EU.
They're leading the fight on clean energy too, aren't they?
Yeah, that's the thing. So it's like they had a bad day, but they came out of it, and that's all of humanity. There's a reason we have cars and electricity and penicillin, because at the end of the day, even though some of us are hot dumpster fires, as a society, we still move forward. We have to drag the idiot half with us, kicking and screaming, but we move forward. That's the story of mankind, and if it wasn't, we'd still be in caves. Sorry, that was a much higher soapbox than I intended to make it.
Oh, no.
Welcome to our TED Talk, everyone.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, seriously, no kidding. But honestly, I loved it, and here's why. Because I think we do tend to go a little doom and gloomy on this show sometimes. And there's a reason that, like, all of us are not blind to the reality that we are living in a dumpster fire time. However, all of us are also equally hopeful, and we need to keep that hope alive. That is what keeps people motivating and keeps people trying for better, is that hope. And I thought that was absolutely well said.
Pivoting from Marjorie Taylor Green, let's look at the other side of the coin. So what happens when the GOP has someone who's not batshit crazy and is actually telling us some truth? Now, someone who I don't necessarily get behind, because anyone named Cheney is no friend of mine. This is a woman who thinks gay people are wrong and not really human beings, and thinks women shouldn't have rights over their own body, and thinks that Jesus drives an Escalade, loves shotguns, and is coming back tomorrow. But she doesn't believe in space lasers and does think 9/11 happens. So we got, on the other side of the coin, we got Liz Cheney, who's like, hey, you know what? Trump's bad. Maybe we should just admit that shit. And maybe it's okay to impeach him. And Liz Cheney didn't even go on this firing brigade of forcing anybody else. She simply expressed that this is what I believe. And as an elected official, I am going to cast my vote, which is my job, in the direction that I believe, to impeach Trump. And the party has gone apeshit for that. Her making that decision, which not only was her right, it was her job, and it was a sane decision, right? And now she's from Wyoming, isn't she? Yeah. I believe she's from the Wyoming. Her state Republican Party voted last week to censure her. Now, censuring is not censoring, it is censuring. And censuring basically just means we're slapping you on the wrist. It has no actual effect. You don't go to jail. It's not a crime. You don't get thrown out of office. It literally just means the party would like to get together in a formal group, join forces shoulder to shoulder, and give you the finger. Yep. And that's what it is. And that's what they did. And it was because of her vote last month to impeach Donald Trump after the insurrection on Jan 6. NPR did whereas NPR got a quote from the actual censuring brief, and this is the quote from the brief that the Republican Party made on their vote, that she violated the trust of her voters, failed to faithfully represent a very large majority of motivated Wyoming voters, so I was right, it is Wyoming, and neglected her duty to represent the party and the will of the state's voters. Jesus. Because she took a vote that was put in front of her. Now, the resolution also states, and falsely, that's the thing. That's the quote from it. And it even says, this is from the same statement. It's not just that. This goes into the QAnon shit. The resolution also falsely states, according to the letter copy, that there was, quote, ample video evidence that the riot at the Capitol was instigated by Antifa and BLM radicals.
Yep. That's the line they're peddling.
Paper.
Which is completely not true.
Yeah, they put that on paper. That's terrifying that they were like public about it. However, when they wanted to actually remove her, right, it's a secret ballot. And so the attempt by the pro-Trump members of the House Republican Conference to take her away from the leadership position, it was defeated. It was got a 145 to 61. And that tells you a lot that most of these guys don't actually think this. They don't agree with it.
Of course they don't think it.
Yeah, they are such cowards.
They're not fucking stupid. Like it. No. I'm serious. If 100 and what'd you say that
145 to 61. So 145 of them are not stupid.
Yeah, 100. But what I'm saying is 145 of them realize that they can actually vote their conscience when it's a secret ballot, but when it's a public ballot, they vote party lines. So what that tells me is that they're not stupid. They understand and agree with the majority of sane people, let's say, and understand what is right and what is wrong. But that when it comes to a public vote, they're so afraid of not getting reelected because of something that they know to be true that they simply vote party lines because otherwise they're going to get voted out.
Again, 145 or not. 61 of them are, because there's a secret ballot. That means that 61 of these guys are true believers.
Yep.
Yeah, I understand that 61 of them are still true believers, or they don't care. They're just going to vote party line regardless. Either they're true believers or they just don't care.
Yeah, true.
But I don't think that they're stupid. I think that there's very few people actually on the same level as Marjorie Green in terms of their intelligence, what they actually think. I think that amount of people is very small.
I would agree. I think Marjorie Taylor Green is a vast minority in terms of true believers.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that 145 to 61 vote tells us two things. It tells us that when no one's looking, 61 of them think she needs to be out of her leadership position. That's the thing. Whether or not they believe in evil space Jewish bankers doesn't matter. 61 of them were like, whoa, she voted to impeach Trump. We got to get her out of here. Because again, no one was looking. Secret ballot. 61 of them thought that. And the other thing that it tells me, again, is that when no one's looking, a majority of them side with sanity. Yeah. And it's only when people are watching their vote. Which is why if the Trump impeachment trial was going to go private vote, he'd be toast.
Oh, in secret vote? Yeah, he would absolutely be convicted.
But because it won't be, he's not.
No, he's gonna walk. Yeah. Everyone knows that he's gonna walk. No one is going to be surprised when next, Monday or Tuesday, whenever the vote is going to conclude, that it'll be 56 or 57 or even maybe 58 because they might flip a few more Republicans. But it is not going to be 160, or it's not going to be 67 to what, 43 at that point?
I don't know.
Or 33.
Like that. But the thing is, this both of these things, whether we're talking about the crazy pants QAnon thing, or we're talking about the impeachment of this fascist criminal, neither one of these are new. The only thing that's new is the American reaction to them and them being successful. Like, okay, so something that this has reminded me a lot of, this QAnon crap, is the House Committee on Un-American Activities, which is commonly known as the Red Scare. It was in the 50s, and for those of you who don't know, basically in the 50s there was this horrible Red Scare where everyone was meant to, the government was purposely pushing a narrative to make everyone afraid of Russia and communism because we were now a war economy and we needed an enemy. But it was actually created before then. It was the House Committee on Un-American Activities, so the HUAC, created in 1938 to investigate disloyalty and subversive actions of private citizens, public employees, and organizations suspected of having fascist or communist ties. Now, remember that. It only says fascist before World War II. Once Germany's defeated, it's only communism. We don't care about the rise of fascism anymore. This came to
people aren't afraid of it anymore.
Yeah, which that's why we're here, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So and this came to a head in just a few years. There was this period where this is where it captured the national attention. It was in 1947. The first time this happened was the committee held 9 days of hearings into alleged communist propaganda and influence in Hollywood, in the motion picture industry.
Yeah.
And this is why it became so famous, is because they attacked Hollywood. This is where the infamous Hollywood 10 comes from.
Yeah.
It's another stand in our democracy. For those who don't, it was 1947. 10 Hollywood screenwriters, directors, producers. These weren't actors. That came later. But it was screenwriters, producers, and directors got brought before the House committee saying that they were putting propaganda in their movies, which, a side history note, that was actually told to happen. Our State Department paid Hollywood to put pro-Russia and communist propaganda in our movies to drum up support for the Allies against Germany.
Yeah, of course they did.
And then afterwards, those same films were used against these people. They asked them to make propaganda and then charged them with making propaganda after the fact. So basically, these guys refused to answer questions. They said, this is horseshit, and it was a sham.
Those of you that are wondering, I just want to put it out there too.
Yeah.
For those that are less politically minded, we've actually seen a lot of references to this stuff in modern movies. So I'll give just a couple of quick ones. Have you ever seen like Julie and Julia, the story of Julia Childs? Her husband goes through one of these interrogations because he was a government worker that had happened to work in China. And so they were going after him. Jim Carrey did a movie called The Majestic about when they were doing this to actors. So it's all over, like the last couple of years, you see it in all kinds of movies where they reference this.
There's actually a movie that came out a while ago called Trumbo. And it's actually about one of the members of this Hollywood 10, Dalton Trumbo. He was a screenwriter. It's an excellent film. Bryan Cranston from Malcolm in the Middle and Breaking Bad. He plays Dalton Trumbo. It's fantastic. It's a beautiful biopic. I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it if you want to learn about this. Because he was actually one of the only ones who actually was a communist. So anyway, so these guys, because they refused to answer these questions to Congress, were arrested for contempt and actually had to spend some time in jail. And then as soon as they got out, they were completely blacklisted by every major studio. So the 10 people were Alva Bessie, Herbert Biberman, Lester Cole, Edward Dimtrick, Ring Lardner Jr., John Howard Lawson, Albert Maltz, Sammer Ortonitz, Adrian Scott, and Dalton Trumbo. Those names probably won't ring a bell unless you're a crazy history nerd like I am, because they were blacklisted and their careers were tanked. But eventually, what this led to, because it was considered a success, because these guys went to jail and their careers were smashed, the committee found this to be the right thing to do. And so eventually more than 300 artists, these are directors, radio commentators, actors, particularly screenwriters, were really boycotted by the studios. I mean, even Lucille Ball, they went after her. So some of the big names like that, Lucille Ball, Charlie Chaplin, Orson Welles, and Alan Lomax actually left the U.S., those three. Now, Charlie Chaplin's one of the founders of United Artists.
Yeah.
This guy's one of the biggest movie stars in history. One of the only that actually crossed over from silent to talkies. Like, hands down, one of the biggest movie stars who's ever existed. And then Orson Welles, Alan Lomax, these were huge names. These guys either left the U.S. and I think it was Lomax who went underground to find work. And that was the only one who could do it. Dalton Trumbo wrote under the names of his friends so that he could get work out there. And only a couple of these guys, these 300, like only a couple of them even succeeded in ever getting their careers back when this was done, of the giant blacklist. But eventually, sanity prevailed, right? Like this didn't go on forever. The committee lost a lot of prestige in the 50s and 60s, mostly starting with McCarthy's nonsense. And despite again, we're talking about this Red Scare, we're talking about Joseph McCarthy, and despite what most people think, he was actually not on the committee. He was a senator, not a representative. He had no place in this. He was just a paranoid nationalist windbag, kind of like Marjorie Taylor Green. These two are cut from the same cloth. It's the same game. They've just put a different color solo cup over the ball when they're playing the 3-card monte with you here. So, and for those of you who don't know McCarthy, he's a guy who was this junior senator. He was a nobody. And then he rose to fame suddenly in 1950 when he put in a speech that he had and this is this quote, a list of members of the Communist Party and members of a spy ring who were employed in the State Department. And then, in the couple of years after that, he kept making speech after speech, accusing of communist infiltration of the State Department. Even Truman's presidency, the president had commies working for him. And even the army. He said the army was getting taken over by the Russian intelligence. And so, yeah, he used all this to nail political opponents and accuse them of being communist sympathizers, sex crimes. Like, he just used everything. There was even what they call a lavender scare, where he started accusing his enemies of being homosexuals. which was not only good for blackmailing them and getting them blackmailed by his friends, but also, remember, being gay in 1950 was a crime, whether it's true or not. And the thing is, it's wrong to accuse someone of being gay for political gain if they're not. It's even more wrong if they are. No matter what, there's no coming out of that cleanly. So anyway, this all finally came to a head in public. It was 1954 that you've got the McCarthy hearings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like when Trump came out and said he's got his tax returns ready, and there was this giant table full of blank papers that he had put in manila envelopes and he thought no one could see. But then, of course, with the telephoto lens, we see they're literally just printer paper with nothing on them. Like, he didn't even take the time to print out junk. He could have just printed out an Excel spreadsheet forever, and it would have been more convincing. McCarthy did the same thing. He stood up there in the middle of the Senate and held up this notebook and this folder and said, "I've got the names right here." They were, he said that he has proof that we've been taken over. And I forgot the number it was, but it was like thousands of communist spies. I have their names. We're good. And then, not surprisingly, he actually didn't have shit. And so when he came to his hearing, he had no evidence to show. And it was the same as this Trump election nonsense. He had a feeling, and the proof was going to come out any minute now, and he's got them all on the ropes, and nothing ever manifested.
Well, and it didn't matter because the damage was already done.
Yeah, and so 54, we have the hearings. It's the emperor has no clothes. We all see behind the curtain that it's horseshit. And that same year, the Senate immediately voted to censure him, just like they did Liz Cheney, but they actually succeeded. A vote of 67 to 22, and his career was toast. He died 3 years later at the age of 48, like a coward and a traitor. And his name has gone down as one of the worst Americans who's ever lived. And I mean, yeah, it wasn't long. This wasn't a long cooling off process. They nailed him as it happened. In 59, Truman called it, quote, the most un-American thing in the country. And so then the committee really starts to really fall apart after that. In the 60s, they tried going after anti-Vietnam War protesters, and the outcry was just huge that they were just smearing Americans for having a political opinion. They rebranded and called themselves the Internal Security Committee in 69, and then in 75, they just completely disbanded.
Besides, Nixon had already figured out how to do that when he started tying drugs to the black community. So
exactly.
that was their in for that point. They didn't need trials and committees.
That pattern of hyperbolic, crazy pants conspiracy theory of hidden enemies is not new. We've fallen to it before, and that's what makes this even more infuriating. We're looking at the same thing. Marjorie Taylor Green is another Joseph McCarthy, but the sad thing is, when Joseph McCarthy was shown to be bullshitting, they got him. They killed him. They threw him right out. It was over. The Senate was like, oh, this guy's full of shit. Be gone. And he was toast. And here we got Marjorie Taylor Green is getting backed up by her entire party. And anyone who dares speak against her is getting votes of censure and trying to get removed from their positions of power.
Yep. Yeah. Every single person that voted in favor of impeachment and voted in favor of getting rid of Marjorie Taylor Green has been censured.
And they've been given, their families are getting death threats.
I should say every Republican that's done this, not every person, every Republican.
Yeah, their families are getting death threats. It's getting nasty, and it's getting terrifyingly awful. And there is no return to sanity here. This is where it branches off, is the fact that a crazy conspiracy theorist has captured the attention of the nation is not without precedent. The fact that the nation has been like, oh, it's full of shit. Oh, well.
Yeah, nobody cares that it's bullshit.
I don't think it's so much that people care. It's just the amount of people that do care versus the amount of people that don't care or believe in it is far too equal. And I think that's where we come into issues, because you got to remember the difference between Trump and Biden was something like, was it 6 million votes? But like in the scope of this entire country, that divide is not all that big. There is a significant number of people that looked at Joe Biden and looked at Trump and went, yeah, this guy Trump is the one that's really going to fix things. And again, anyone who's listened to this show knows we're no lovers of Biden, but there are objective. There's a scale of good and bad, and Biden is objectively better than Trump. Like, he's back to 10 years ago level of bad, but Trump is and pretty much a Nazi in everything but name. The guy is a racist, a bigot, a sexist, a sex offender, a pedophile, a rapist. Like every bad thing that we have a name for, he is. And even like petty crimes, like he's a swindler, he's a con man, he's evaded taxes. And all of this stuff, like, it's not like this is just lies that are being made up. This is all stuff that not only have we caught him in these lies, we have proof of these things. He's admitted to them. He's literally on video saying, I grab women by the pussy. Like, that is something that the president of the United States is on video is saying publicly and admitting to. And then when everyone challenged on him,
bragging about sexual assault,
bragged about it. And then when everyone was like, what the hell? Everyone that supports him, like, well, what's wrong with that? Like, that's the difference is before the people that would do that were few and far between and were vastly outnumbered. Now they aren't. I mean, we still outnumber them, but the gap is way smaller than it should be.
And the part that really surprises me, because to be honest, I'm not surprised that a bunch of old white men also agree with Trump that you can just grab a woman by the pussy, apparently, is that there are a bunch of apologist women that just, oh, well, he didn't really mean that, or they give some other bullshit line. Why that kind of speech and why that kind of thinking and idea is okay.
There is no group that is oppressed or marginalized that does not have an army of Uncle Toms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah,
there
you're right.
Will be. There will be collaborators who will fight against their own self-interests no matter what.
Every single time.
Yeah. But it just surprises me. It surprises me because how blatant it is.
It's the viewpoint of like, well, if I'm on their side, I won't be the victim. And again, I don't think they're conscious of it, but I think that's ultimately what the mentality is. And they rationalize it by saying things of like, well, those women had it coming and all this other bull crap that we all know isn't true. But if they can make the people that are the victims of this garbage to be something other than what they are, then they're immune from this kind of behavior. That's the thinking that goes behind it. That's why you have things like victim blaming and victim shaming. It's because if the women on that side can make it the fault of those women, it can't possibly happen to them.
Yeah.
I guess.
And it's just locker room talk. It's just locker room talk. It's like, okay, you either think he brags about sexual assault because he's done it, or you think he brags about sexual assault because he thinks sexual assault is funny. Like, either way, where's the win?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's both, and neither of them are good.
You know, and again, here's the thing. We're all dudes. We're all straight cis white males. You guys' experiences may differ, but I've never felt the need to brag to my friends about raping and sexually assaulting women to feel better about myself. Have you guys needed to do that?
No.
Never with me, at least. And it's just like this idea of that this is just how men are. No, this is how bad men are. This is how bad men who have been raised badly are. This is how bad men who have been raised badly and taught badly are. This is not how good men are. This is not how good men act. To try and sit here and just write this off as just guys being guys, it's just the most absurd thing I've ever heard. No guy that I know of in my circle has ever acted that way. I don't think I can even in high school, when I was as stupid as I've ever been, I don't think I have a single friend that would ever even joked about something like this. And again, I'm not saying there aren't people that do, and they can grow out of it. But this is the type of behavior we should all be joining in condemning. Like, nobody should be apologizing for this.
Yeah, 100%. There should be no allowance for this. And again, just like, you know, we see the McCarthy hearings and the Red Scare be obnoxious, be weird, capture attention, but then sanity returns when it's exposed for what it is. That should be happening with Trump, with the Trump impeachment as well. I mean, the first impeachment still was insane that it didn't go through because he very clearly obstructed justice. But the second one, especially, the dude literally stood there on national television and incited a mob. Not only just as it would be one thing if he incited a mob to go burn down a Target. Not that I'm advocating that that's what he should have done or that would have been a good thing. But that would have been like, okay, he incited a riot. This guy incited an insurrection. Their goal was not to get some new sneakers or to show the man something. Their goal was to stop the process of an election. This was a fucking coup, and I know that the media's been throwing that word around, but it's not hyperbolic. He literally tried to do a violent takeover and stop a free and fair election. Now, there was the Clinton impeachment. There's been other ones. I mean, and those were jokes and nothing was going to happen. But there's the only recent one that's even happened since the 20th century is the Nixon impeachment. Before that, it was in the 1800s. So the only impeachment we've ever had that was actually from true criminal activities, not just some jerk lying about a BJ, was the Nixon impeachment, where this guy actually committed like crimes, right? And it was during the Watergate scandal. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Watergate, the short and dirty is basically during his election, burglars under his direction broke into DNC offices at the Watergate Hotel during the election to get him info on what they were up to, right? And there was, two reporters calling themselves, Deep Throat, like broke the story and blah, blah, blah. And the rest is history. But what happened is this went up for impeachment, and nobody, the Republican Party had aligned behind him. And it was the same thing as the first Trump impeachment. It was like, nope, this isn't going to go anywhere. Nothing's going to happen to him. And then in 1974, the Judiciary Committee got edited transcripts of the taped White House conversations that were relevant to Watergate, and they were made public by Nixon because they wanted the tapes. Now, so these tapes are called the smoking gun tapes. They were unique because Nixon was a paranoid and weird control freak. The idea that there's tapes in the White House, you might think the Secret Service might set them up, that kind of thing. That had never existed before, and they were not set up by the Secret Service. Nixon himself had tape recorders hidden all over the Oval Office. He set up secret recording devices, and he kept all the tapes. Now, that's normally pretty weird, but it's exceptionally stupid considering that's the office he was doing crime in. Like, it would be like live streaming you making plans on Zoom of robbing the bank.
Or wait. Going and participating in a coup and then wearing sweaters that show where you work?
Right? Without masks on?
Yeah. And live streaming the coup?
Yeah. So Congress wanted the tapes, obviously, as evidence. Nixon said, screw you. And they issued subpoenas for all of the tapes, which, again, Nixon, refused them. That same month, Nixon also refused to comply with a subpoena for 64 other tapes. But basically, by July, this is all in the same year, 1974, July 24th, U.S. Supreme Court does a unanimous decision. I swear to God, there's not one dissenting judge. A unanimous decision against Nixon, which ordered him to comply with the subpoena. And this is where he was screwed. Just like Trump, where he has this ego where he thinks he's untouchable, Nixon had that too. Just like Trump, the party was rallied behind him. Nixon's actually the first one who said publicly that a sitting president can't be prosecuted for crimes. He really thought, I'm just fucking above the law. I'm king. Nothing you can do to me. Who cares? So he had that arrogance that, yeah, so what if these tapes exist? I'm just not going to turn them over. I don't care what anybody says. And then when the Supreme Court turned on him, there's nothing they could do. Trump didn't come up with that idea. That he stole that from Nixon, which, again, talk about a weird person to take as a mentor. The most disgraced president. I mean, not the worst president. We've had far worse. But the most disgraced president is Nixon, and that's who Trump really modeled after. And so once these tapes came out, it was over. It was done. The tapes came out, everyone heard them, and the vote didn't even go. Literally, all of Nixon's friends were like, hey, we're not supporting you anymore. There's tapes here coming out where you're talking about paying these guys to break into the DNC headquarters and steal files. Like, nah, bro. Like, you paid for burglars to screw an election. It's not happening. We're not supporting you anymore. And Nixon immediately resigned. Immediately. He was done.
Well, because he knew he was screwed.
Yeah, got the fuck out of Dodge. That's what Nixon did.
And got a pardon for his troubles.
Well, yeah, Nixon brought Lyndon B. Johnson as vice, and Jumbo didn't even want to be president. Jumbo was a senator who had lots of favors, and this is a guy who knew how to legislate. And he's the kind of guy who would never be president. And Nixon was already in hot water when this happened. Remember, the Watergate scandal was on his reelection. And upon it happening, shit went real south. He had Jumbo Johnson in knowing that he would be able to count on him for favors, because that's how Johnson ran the Senate. He was a whip. This guy had everyone owed him favors. He kept track of this. He was a kingmaker. That's what he did. And that's who you want on your side. If you're about to get your ass handed to you, and you want the guy who considers favors real currency as the guy who owes you a favor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Johnson did what Johnson would do. Johnson wasn't going to be like, oh, well, you know. No, Johnson was like, yep, I owe this guy. He made me VP. Of course I'm going to pardon him. That's how you do things. He was old school with that. That's how that worked. But again, the party turned on him. Whether or not he got a pardon, who cares? Once evidence, when it was hearsay, when it was probable, the party was like, yeah, we're going to forget about that convenient stuff and we're still going to support our guy. But then once there's audio tapes of him committing crimes, it's like, well, yeah, jig's up, buddy. And they turned on him. And so this idea that a president could commit this high level of treason, fraud, and high crimes and misdemeanors, they call it, isn't new. The fact that when full-on video evidence is there and everyone is still supporting him along party lines, that's the new twist. That's the scary twist. That's where we've deviated from the historical norm. And that's what's scary to me. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I don't know. What do you guys think about this deviation? Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm crazy?
No, I think you're spot on.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. 100%. Hooray for echo chambers.
I hate for us to be in an echo chamber on that kind of thing, but
no, but here's the thing.
To be honest, it's the fucking truth.
Well, but that's what we are here. The premise of our weekly circle jerk here is we're giving the perspective of three different leftists. And while we do have varying views on how we get to the end goals, we pretty much all agree on what the end goal should be. So it doesn't surprise me when we agree more often than not. And on something like this, the facts are there. We all agree that we care about facts and reality more than anything else, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So if the facts point us there, we're going to go there. If the facts tell us something different, we're going to go somewhere else, And again, we're pretty much on point with this one, Chris.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you're not wrong.
There's an old, everyone's heard the, history repeats itself. And there's actually a saying, there's a vernacular that I like much better, that I didn't come up with this. But that history does not repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And I like that. And that's what this feels like. This is clearly rhyming, but it's not the way it should be. And we're going down a dark turn. And if we don't do what we've always done of at least believing in evidence, we're going to go places we've never gone before. And this is going to get real bad real quick.
Yeah. We've got to get back to that point where we can agree on facts. And again, this is anecdotal, but I'm speaking to the far left wingers out here too.
Ooh, gross. Who are they?
It's people that have accused me of being a corporate shill because I cite NPR. Pinkos. Yeah, no. You, my friend, and various other communists I've engaged with, not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these people that claim they're progressives and leftists. And then when you cite a source like NPR or any of the fact-checking sites that we referenced on a previous episode, they look at you and tell you that you're just a corporate shill, you aren't a real progressive, you're a centrist, and that anyone who reads mainstream media like that is an idiot.
Oh, no, those are just paranoid people.
But they're there. They exist.
Just a tinfoil hat.
They exist in left-wing circles, centrist circles, right-wing circles, and you've got to be aware because, and like I've pointed out before, I see similar cults of personality developing around left-wing people as well, and not good ones. Like there's some good ones, but there's also a few bad ones. I mentioned Jimmy Dore before. It's really creepy the way people will rush to defend anything he says. Like, I'm not talking about when he was, going after AOC for not forcing the vote. I may not agree with that, but I can get behind it. But I'm talking about when he spews conspiracy theory nonsense and people mention it and then they accuse you of being a progressive or a centrist in progressive clothing. literally because I said Jimmy Dore's repeating conspiracy theories, and that's a bad thing. And again, I don't want to harp too much on the left, but it exists everywhere. We have to start somewhere. The sources we've given are what we use. None of us are advocating for listening to us point blank. Look at the information, but their mainstream media is reliable. I'm just going to say it. It's the best source we have. I'm not saying go to Fox News and listen to Sean Hannity. That's not mainstream media. I'm talking about print media, reading articles on the web, go to their websites, that kind of thing. And then fact check it. Go along, do a Google search, do any kind of search, try and dig. And yes, it takes time. But just because you went to, leftistblog.com where freaking, Mike the basement dweller tells you that Jimmy Dore is the only one that really knows what's going on, doesn't mean you actually know what's going on. It just means you're watching a bunch of stupid YouTube videos from a bunch of people that don't know how to critically think. You're no better than a right-winger that does that.
Well, and that's just as dogmatic as, like you said, as any other right-winger that believes in any other conspiracy theory or Jewish space lasers or whatever else.
Exactly.
It's just as bad to perpetuate left-wing conspiracies as it is to perpetuate right-wing conspiracies.
Exactly.
Well, speaking about echo chambers in the ether, how are we doing online?
We're doing all right.
What's in the fan mail bag?
Okay, so we got a couple things. The first one's a repeat, but I actually wanted to take special mention. So last week we addressed a Twitter user who had just started following us and blowing us up. Basehead Faye. This time I did confirm the way to pronounce her name, Basehead Faye. She wrote to us again. Two things I wanted to shout out for her. The first one is responding to her message. For this message, what she was saying was that she agreed with us on the Jimmy Dore stuff. Let me actually read you, though, because it was kind of funny. I have feedback for Matt or Baby Chris. I'm sorry, I really have a hard time identifying who is who. They have a hoarser voice, though. But she was referencing...
That's Matt.
That's actually funny because I think all three of us sound so differently. Like, again, everyone hates the sound of their voice, but I think I sound like such a tradition, like such a stereotypical California douchebag. And
really, because I was going to say twat.
I don't hear that in my own voice, and then I hear myself after maybe it's just Kay. Maybe maybe Kay is working with the Jewish Space Force and he's making me sound stupid on the editing of the podcast. We're on to something. Matt, you edit it.
That's it. Yep.
But yeah, like I hear my own voice and I hate it. I think I sound actually really stupid. But like Kay's got more of a slower tone, comes from a little more in the diaphragm, and Matt has a far more raspy tone to his voice. Like I think all three of us sound so differently. I'm surprised to hear that people are having trouble differentiating us.
Who knows? But I thought it was great. I was tickled. I've never heard my voice described as hoarse, but I also agree with you. I think my voice is horse shit. So horse is halfway there. But her comment was, but the Jimmy Dore comment was completely on point. Fuck Jimmy Dore and his following is absolutely Trumpian and terrifying for us. And again, I say that to say this. I'm not going to say fuck Jimmy Dore. I don't think he's that level of out there crazy. I think he's absolutely aggressive and he believes in a lot of leftist values, and that's a good thing. That should be applauded. My issue does not come from people that like Jimmy Dore. My issue comes from people that look at Jimmy Dore and don't critically think about anything he says, and then will criticize anybody that brings up something that he says is wrong. That is what I'm talking about. It's not about liking someone. You can like anyone you like. I like AOC. I like Bernie Sanders. But if AOC and Bernie Sanders do or say something that is wrong, I'm going to talk about it. Just like the opposite side. If none of us like Mitt Romney, we all think Mitt Romney's a piece of shit. But when he does something right, we're going to mention it because it's about policy. It's about facts. It's about what is objectively true, no matter whose mouth it comes out of. And if somebody you like says something that you agree with, it's very easy to go in and be like, yes, I agree with it. That's great. It's much harder to listen to their stuff objectively. And when they say something that you don't agree with or that you know is wrong, to come out and rip yourself away from that like and be like, no, that's bullshit. But that's what you need to do. It's about staying informed. The reason I wanted to bring her back out is not just for that comment. I did see on Twitter that I guess her husband officially has COVID-19. And it's because his boss is a piece of shit that doesn't believe in wearing masks and forcing, and he works with a bunch of right-wingers. So it spread. And so unfortunately he caught it. He's recovering from what I saw, but I just wanted to give her a special shout out. We're all wishing him a quick recovery. We know he can't smell or taste right now, but if that's the worst of what he gets, that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Thank you to her. And then that was the only big one. The last, kind of not really shout outs, but I did wanted to mention this. I don't know if you guys remember, but I did a little quick write up last week about $15 minimum wage and why it should really be 2024. So we got multiple comments on different sites, but they all kind of had the same theme. And it was roughly this idea of like, well, you're right, but 15, it's good that we're getting 15 and, this is just a step and we should be glad we're getting this. And I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that because I don't really agree with that. I don't think that we should be happy to be getting the scraps that we should have gotten 25 years ago. I think we should always be demanding more. And we should always, that's not how you negotiate. If what we should be getting as a living wage is $24 an hour, we should be demanding 28 and getting 24. Like that's how you negotiate. You know what I mean? I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Go ahead, Kay. You know mine's going to be extreme.
Actually, I do know yours is going to be extreme. So, two things. First of all, I do think that we need to be happy that some people are getting 15. But I also believe that anyone that is only getting 15 needs to get more. I think that it is a good step in the right direction. Is it enough? Fuck no. I have come to find out that a lot of people at the place that I work, a lot of them don't get paid very much. Recently here in California, we went to $14 an hour minimum wage in the state. So we're already well above most of the rest of the country as far as our minimum wage. Or maybe that's here in Los Angeles. I don't quite know. But simply to say is that the people that are just barely making minimum wage, they should be making more too. And so for everyone to get 15, at least there is something to be happy about. Yeah, you're making a little bit more money. Should you be satisfied with it is the question. And no, we should not be satisfied with it, but we should be happy that we're making some advance at the very least.
I would say that was the justification for Jim Crow. I don't like moderate increase. And there's an argument to be made for short and steady wins the race in other cultures. For instance, that works really well in nations like England, Germany, Finland, Sweden, places that are some of the better places to live. Incremental change and progress has worked really well. In fact, rapid change has worked terribly for those cultures. Other cultures, not so much. We're a lot like the French. Unlike the French, we don't have the will to actually change things, but when the French get screwed over, they start burning shit down. And they do it organized. That is a country in a state of constant revolution, which is why it's a fantastic place to live. In America, we don't do that, and what we get is our incremental change is never enough. And that's the thing is, if it's one of those, look, it's going to be slow, but we're going to get there, but we never get there. We never get there. We wait until, look at this fight for 15 is almost 20 years too late.
25 years. It's 25 years
too late. And now it's being dangled like some fucking carrot. Like, look, guys, we're doing something for you. Well, no, if you wait 25 years to establish a minimum wage after record inflation, 25 years late, you haven't. You've kept up with the same level of oppression. Nothing has changed.
And I agree with you. I actually do. I agree that we should be at 25. That's why I was saying is, should we be happy with it? We should at least be happy that they're doing something, but we cannot be satisfied with it. There needs to be more.
Yes, there does. But I'm just saying, not only will I not be satisfied, I won't even clap for it. I won't even cheer for it. In fact, it's kind of like the $600. It's an insult. It's leaving your waiter a $1 tip. Mm-hmm. It is an insult. Because it's not just that they're giving us table scraps, it's they're giving us table scraps and telling us we should be grateful for the lovely banquet they've given us. That's the insulting part, is they've been like, fine, now you can continue to starve to death. That's the
again,
issue I have with it. Is that
I get what you're saying. I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, but it's that we're at a deficit, and that deficit is ever increasing. And until you make a rapid leap to bring us current, any incremental change along the way is just feeding the deficit.
Okay, well then let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If they were to say by, let's say, 2030, that they were going to raise the minimum wage to a point to bring it up to that current for 2030 production wage.
So basically what you're saying is if they promise that, like, okay, over the next 9 years, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We were going to incrementally change it to where that, for instance, if we're going to say that $24 an hour is the actual standard of living wage, right? What
Correct.
we're promising is that by 2030, you will have the equivalent of a 2020 $24. That would be fine, but that would not be incremental change. That would be grand, vast, rapid change given an implementation period, and I would be super on board with that. Because I'm fine with the economy giving a little bit of time to catch up, but there needs to be the promise. There needs to be, by this date, everyone working full-time will have an apartment and a car and healthcare.
Well, and I can agree with that.
Yeah.
I can absolutely agree with that. And I think that actually is a much better plan than this $15 an hour and no promise of anything in the future. I think that's the biggest insult is the no promise of anything greater.
Exactly. It's that there's no solution to the system. I'm fine with and that's where compromise needs to happen. People talk about this unity and compromise across the aisles. That's how it's supposed to be. It's, hey, this is the right thing to do. I think we should do this. And the other side goes, I think that's a bit too brash. I think we should get there, but we need this compromise to make this feasible. Hey, that's a meet in the middle. Let's do it. That's how this should operate. And instead, what we get is, hey, people shouldn't die. And the other side goes, that's expensive. Yeah, with that conversation that you and I just had, that's how legislation should work.
Yeah.
And it doesn't for some reason. Because, money.
And then one last thing. So the last thing I wanted to hit you guys with is just something a little bit fun. Real quick. So I was looking at some of our numbers as far as listenership and things go. I am pleased to announce that we are in 7 major countries, which is nice to know. So the top countries that we have listeners in, the US being number 1, of course, followed by Canada. Then we get Ireland, the United Kingdom, Australia, France, and the Netherlands. So big shout outs to everyone in those countries who's a listener. We didn't know we had that big of a reach, so we want to say thank you very much for tuning in. And then one last thing I thought might be fun. So,
hello, and as Americans like to greet people in other lands, hello.
No, you're supposed to say it louder when they don't understand.
Oh, that's right. That's how you do it when you're ignorant monolingual. Hello. Yeah. Have you seen a flag? It's everywhere.
And then one last quick little game. So here in the United States, for those of you that don't live here, we are separated into 50 different states. United is one. If you guys had to guess, okay, take California out because that's where we all live. That's where we're going to have the highest listenership. Of the top 5 places we live, the next 4 after California, of the top 5 places we have listeners in the United States, the top 5 states after California, which do you think the next top 4 are? Take a guess.
Washington, Oregon, and Texas are on that list. Guaranteed.
Okay.
I'm going to say it's probably much more Republican states, like maybe Virginia, maybe Tennessee, and then maybe something like a Washington, Florida.
Texas is still my number 1, but as long as it's not Iowa, because fuck Iowa.
Not bad. Not bad. You guys are actually kind of close. So here's the order, okay? So California is number 1, okay? Directly after that is Oregon.
Oh, one for me.
Yep, followed by Texas.
No!
Okay, all right. So
I'm sorry. Hold on. I got it wrong. I got the order wrong. It goes California, Virginia, and North Carolina are tied. Then it goes Oregon, then it goes Texas.
All right, see, some Republicans in there. The Republican states, pardon
No,
me.
those are leftists under siege.
Yeah.
Those are castaways.
Which, again, in that vein, because we're also, Kay is not wrong. We actually like getting into like some much smaller numbers, but we are absolutely have some listeners in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky. Like we're in those states.
Well, to both of you in Kentucky, thanks for listening.
Actually, that was dead on. There's exactly 2 listeners in Kentucky.
I called it.
Thank you for the 2 listeners in Kentucky. We appreciate you vastly.
And all of you listeners, for those of you in southern states, we are with you. We feel it. Like we've talked about, like I may live in a blue state, but narrow that scope down and I am in a very red crimson town. And that is close. That is pretty much the same, I think, for all 3 of us. So we know what you're feeling. We appreciate you guys listening. You guys want to give some shout outs to our listeners overseas in other countries and across the country.
Thanks. I don't really know what to say. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you. I hope you didn't stumble upon us by accident and clicked away. If you like what we say, and again, honestly, if you're not one of our echo chamber people, if you're from a different state, or if you're from, as everyone else in the civilized world would call it, a different state, drop us a line. Let us know. Be like, hey, I'm out in the middle of frickin' Georgia. Or, hey, yeah, I am out in the middle of Georgia.
I love your Georgian accent. It's great.
Yeah,
it was good. It's a proud accent, sir. Lots of goats in Georgia, actually. Both of them. It's really strange. It's the other commonality they have.
No, I was talking about the other Georgian.
No, both of them. But anyway, we're getting way off. Anybody who's from anywhere else in the world or the country, drop us a line. Tell us what's up. Tell us you like us. Tell us you don't like us. I don't care. But let us know. Hit us up on Instagram or Twitter or email us and let us know what you think, or if there's something you want to talk about, or if you want to pose a question. Matt's really good at throwing randos at us.
Yep. And I will absolutely answer. I just want to qualify one thing. If we make a point about something and your first response to me, you guys are just a bunch of fucking douchebags in an echo chamber. Fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about. Trump 2024.
Yeah, but douchebags in an echo chamber was the original idea name for the podcast.
It was. However, if that's your first, reach out to me, probably not going to answer you.
Might not.
But we had a couple people already that have we've been shooting the crap with, and it's been like really quick interactions. That's why I didn't do specific shout outs, but anything that's at length, I try to shout out. And we don't always agree. Like, even like we said here, we did a response to a lot of people disagreeing with us on how to implement the Fight for 15. So
and
if
that's
you're respectful,
okay.
We care. Yeah. That's
Discourse
exactly
is awesome. It's okay to disagree.
Yep. 100%.
Everyone, thank you for being here. Thank you for letting us invade your ear holes again. We love doing this. We love hearing from you. We love having you listen to us. So please come back again next Monday. We will be here with something interesting to say, I promise. Instead of my usual ending quote, I actually want to quote Bernie Hussein Sanders, who tweeted today, "The Republican Party has a fundamental choice to make. It can be a conservative party that believes in democracy and the rule of law, or it can be an authoritarian party that's built on conspiracy theories, violence, and the big lie. But it cannot be both." Thank you again, everyone, and we will see you next week on the Alt Left.